All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us.
You've reached the internet's home for all things Masonry. Join On the Level podcast as we plumb the depths of our ancient craft and try to unlock the mysteries, dispel the fallacies, and utilize the teachings of Freemasonry to unlock the greatness within each of us.
I have you now.
All right. Welcome back to On the Level podcast, formerly On the Level with Fred and Chris. Today we have a guest, special guest. I don't know if I call you Sir Knight. I don't know if I call you Most Worshipful. I don't know if I call you Worshipful Right Brother. I'm not good with titles, so I'll just say Brother Roberto M. Sanchez. Welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you for having me, Chris. It's an honor to be here.
So, give me some of your titles. Help me sort all this out. I know you've done a lot in the fraternity, and a lot of our listeners might not know who you are, and I need them to know who you are before we get into why you're here and what we're going to talk about.
Well, I am a past Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of the State of Mexico, Gran Logia del Estado de Mexico, which is the state that surrounds Mexico City. I'm also the current Grand Chancellor for that jurisdiction. I'm in the Grand York Right Lines in Hawaii. I'm the Grand Generalissimo for the Grand Commandery of the Grand Commandery of Hawaii. I'm also in the chapter and the council line there. I'm the Grand Master of the Royal Society of Knights Occidental. I was the Grand Bung for the Order of Corks. So I'm involved in pretty much every Masonic body that exists. Very active in all. Belong to 30 lodges around the world, from Belgium to Alaska to Hawaii to the UK, all over. Brazil, Mexico, obviously several in the US.
Wow, that's amazing.
I get around.
How long have you been a Mason now?
I was initiated, passed, and raised in 2005, so 18 years and some change.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And you currently a Texan?
Yeah, I was entered, passed, and raised in Texas. My family lives here in Texas. I have a house in Hawaii, a house in Mexico. I travel a lot for work. So
what do you do for work?
I'm a consultant for the rail industry, regulatory manager for the rail industry. So I have a vast territory and which is literally all over the world. So if I'm needed, I'll schedule myself to be in wherever I need to be. So
you're a true traveling man in every sense of the word.
Absolutely. Pre-COVID, I used to make 120 flights a year. Since COVID, it slowed down a little bit, but I'm still busy.
That's crazy. Well, I want to thank you for coming on the show. We've been talking through Facebook for a couple months now. I think I reached out to you because I started following some of the happenings of the Grand Lodge shenanigans in Texas on the Facebook group for Texas Freemasons. Yep. And you, over time, seem to have become kind of the lightning rod that everyone kind of coalesced behind, is what it looked like from the outside. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
That's absolutely what happened. Lightning rod is a name that the powers that be or the past Grand Masters gave me as it was supposed to be a diss, but we turned it into a positive and completely shocked the world, for lack of a better pun. But I stirred into that skid. I've had issues with some of those guys in the past, and when I saw them doing the same thing they tried to do to me years ago, I did not let them get away with it this time. So
that's crazy that the people, the everyday brothers, kind of, and I mean, I guess we should start at the beginning. One of the things that I talked about when I covered this previously was it's really difficult to find out what's really happening from an outside perspective, because the jurisdiction of Texas has laws against talking about anything that happens at Grand Lodge outside of Grand Lodge. They'll take your charter if you're in a lodge, and Masons can't talk about it. Like, no one can talk about this stuff. Is that correct?
That's not normally the case. So the junior past Grand Master put a lot of gag orders from the gate. So I guess to kind of start a little bit at the beginning, we, like most Grand Lodges, we have rules, codes, regulations that everybody follows.
Sure.
And with ours, for as long as I've been a Mason, I've noticed that the past grandmasters or the powers that be, I call them the machine.
You call them the what?
The machine.
The machine. Okay.
Orchestrates this seamless, and they have a playbook. And again, I'm very familiar with the playbook because 10 years ago in 2014, I was a hot up-and-comer in Masonry. I was district deputy at the time, doing a lot of things. I made myself available for a couple of office. And I was bringing the Masonic Rosicrucians, SRICF, to Texas, a second call to that. Not because I asked for it, but because I was tapped by the Supreme Magus to start a second one. And the machine didn't want it, didn't like it, so they threatened me, and they told me if I didn't cease and desist, I would rule the day. And I was, okay.
So actual threat, and a real threat.
Absolutely, yeah. And I was summoned to the past Grand Master's office during the Grand Lodge session back in 2013, and Reese Harrison, which that is a name that everybody in Texas knows, but he's very popular, or should I say infamous.
Infamous. That's different than popular.
He's very infamous. Everybody knows who he is in the national, in the big dog, right?
Yeah.
He's the most decorated Mason in the history of the United States.
Wow.
He's got more national titles than anybody ever.
What was this brother's name?
Reese H. Harrison, or Reese L. Harrison Jr. He's from San Antonio.
Is this where the term Reese's Pieces came from?
That's it.
Okay, this makes sense now. I saw a lot of chatter about Reese's Pieces, and I was like, wow.
Reese's Pieces.
M&Ms.
Yeah, Reese's Pieces is the term that I came up with for his followers. Because a lot of people follow this man blindly. Because they're afraid of him. If you don't do what Reese wants, he would destroy you. And he's a lawyer, so some people are afraid that they might get sued. And he dangles Masonic titles and honors and things over people's heads. And if you want to play in this game, you have to do what I tell you, or you'll never get it. And he not only does that in Texas, but at Masonic Week, he's one of the powerhouses. He's one of the three. There's 3 camps at Masonic Week that kind of rule all the national organizations, and he's the head of one of them. He's the head of the more powerful one, you could say.
Yikes!
So people are afraid of this guy, and so that's why I came up with the term Reese's Pieces, as anybody that has sold their integrity for a pot medal to follow this man for whatever reason. So, anyways, back to the story. In 2013, when I was getting the second Rosicrucian College in Texas, this man threatened me, and he told me either you cease and desist or you'll rule the day and your Masonic career is over. And I try to not plead with him, but kind of tell him, like, look, that's un-Masonic. I didn't ask for this. It's already happened. It's not how this works.
Right.
And his response was, well, no, you do as I tell you or you're done. And he had beef with the Supreme Mags at the time, a guy named Bill Kuhn, very good friend of mine. And he basically told him, it's either him or me. You get to pick. You either pick Texas or you pick him, and pick right now. And I didn't like being threatened or told that I needed to pick a side right then, so I just walked out of the room. And 13 days later, I had 10 Masonic charges filed.
10 charges?
Yeah, 10 charges. And I tried to fight them. The Grand Lodge wouldn't tell me anything. As I went through it, I found out that a lot of past Grand Masters, the then Grand Secretary, a lot of really big deal name Masons from the time were the ones that wrote the charges and created this whole conspiracy. They threatened a lot of my friends. My friends that ended up getting sued that defended me. It became a huge, massive thing for years.
They got sued outside of the fraternity, or just Masonic charges?
Civil law, in civil court, every officer and a couple of friends that defended me were sued for $1 million apiece. In hopes that they would all turn on me and give them what they wanted, but every one of them stood firm. They didn't turn on me. They're like, no, what you guys are doing is wrong. So essentially, they filed 2 more Masonic charges. The Grand Master of the next year, Michael Wiggins, who is now the SGIG of Texas, he filed 2 more Masonic charges against me. So now we're up to 12. And again, years before we went to actual trial, they pulled all sorts of shenanigans. So I became very familiar with their playbook. And finally went to trial, spent 12 hours at the trial. The jury took 7 minutes to find all 12 charges false because they were bullshit. So we poked holes into every single thing that they did. So I knew the playbook. I knew what they were capable of.
So in the jurisdiction of Florida, our digest says that if you bring charges against a brother and they're found to be false, you've opened yourself up to being charged yourself for unmasonic conduct. Is that the case in Texas?
Thing in Texas. Now, when my trial was now in the middle of all this trial, I ended up getting sued myself for $10 million by two different individuals, but they were all contingency on me being found guilty at the Masonic trial. When my Masonic charges were dismissed, the trial master looked at me and said, these are all now false charges, and that is a Masonic offense. Would you like to file charges against all your accusers? And I told him no. I wanted it to end because it had been years. And I assumed Masons were good people, so the Masons that defamed me for years would do the right thing and be like, you know what, we screwed up. We're sorry for causing so much trouble. No, not even a little bit. So
this is like one of our biggest weaknesses, I think, as a fraternity is we assume people are doing good or they have good intentions. We assume that even when they're showing us over and over again that they're not. We try to make the assumption that there's good here, good's going to come of this, or the right's going to prevail. But really, at the end of the day, and I've gotten a lot of flack from personal friends because I see things and I want to say something. And they're like, it's not your job to police the fraternity. Well, whose goddamn job is it then? Whose job is it to police? Because they're not doing it at the top. So who's supposed to do this stuff if not us?
Exactly what happened this year. And it just kind of grew from there. Eventually all of my stuff went away, right? I won the trial, which made all the lawsuits, the ones against me and against all my friends, they all went away.
That's
so everything got away. I expected these guys to apologize and to rectify what they did the complete opposite. They lied. They said that I squeezed by. They said to try to say that the trial never happened. That a grandmaster of mine just became friends and just dismissed the charge. No, none of that happened. I have the 12-hour recording of the trial. No. But
wow, 12 hours.
Yeah, it was a long trial. And for 12 hours they just sit there and threw all sorts. They claimed that I was the head of a Mexican cartel, that's how I can afford to travel everywhere that I go to, and that I was smuggling drugs. And then all the guys that were helping me were under the threat of death, and that's why they were so loyal to me that if they stepped out of line, they would die. And it was asinine.
Well, let me ask you this, and this is okay, maybe people won't like it, but are these individuals white?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Do you think that had any bearing on their motivations, the fact that you are from another country?
Oh, some of them for sure. I heard it this weekend. And that's one of the reasons I'll need to post a picture online so you could see it. But my traveling apron as a past Grandmaster of Mexico is very loud. It's got a giant Mexican flag on it. Yeah. And I wear that one proudly because I know it rises the hairs on the back of their head when they see. There's another one that's blue and it's more common to but I wear the Mexican flag one just because I know.
Nice. Now, what was the real reason that you got them so hot and bothered over you? What were you doing that got so under their skin that they had to bury you?
I was flying too close to the sun and rose too fast. 2013.
You weren't part of the cabal. You weren't part of the machine, and you clearly weren't going to play game. They were game with them when they came to you and tried to put you in line.
The big thing is that and that's the problem, and that's where the story gets interesting, is that people that go on the climb, they'll approach you and I guess test you to see if you're going to be bending a knee or play the game. And yep. I don't. I answer to no one. It's me and God, and that's it. I'm not gonna just no. And I went specifically with the Rosicrucian Charter. When the Supreme Magus said, I'm going to get a second Rosicrucian College in Texas, and I want you to lead it. And I said, yes, sir. And I didn't ask for their permission. And when they told me to turn it down, I wouldn't. That was the last straw. But I was also running for the Grand Commandery line at the time and running for the Lodge of Research, and they stopped that because of the charges. So it became a huge thing. But
so once you cleared all the charges and all the lawsuits are gone, how bummed are you about being a Freemason at that point? Or do you feel like justice prevailed? Maybe you have some hope in the fraternity. Where are you at that point?
Different. I was more energized when it was over, just because of how many people from all over the world came to my defense and kind of stood by me. Not loudly, not like I did with this issue here, but they stood firm behind me just in case, and just to push me forward. And when I would get a little bit, no, keep going. Yeah. So what happened, and that's why I joined as many lodges as I did, is that I had several jurisdictions that were like, hey, if you get screwed over in Texas,
you come right here,
and you'll be good here.
Yeah.
Now, at the time, I couldn't because I was under charges. So one of the things that you're in Texas, when you're under charges, you cannot demit, you cannot affiliate.
That
So-
seems to be a tool they use to weaponize their agenda in Texas, is to bring charges.
Absolutely, and that's what they've been doing. And that's what made me lose my cool this year, because they use that playbook.
So you were triggered. You see what's going on, and you're triggered now. You're like, oh hell no, oh hell no.
And the people that they were doing it to were all friends of mine, and I saw the playbook, and I would go up to them and be like, "This is what's going to happen next," and they just look at me and like, "You're crazy," and then it would happen, and then I would get phone calls, and I'm like, "How the hell did you know?" I lived it.
Been there, done that. T-shirt.
And so the story with what happened this year is that Texas has a weird dynamic than most states, because we're actually fully democratic when it comes to electing our leaders. Most states claim that they are, but they're not. Most states, the Grand Master will appoint the Grand Steward or the Grand Deacon, and if he keeps his nose up, he advances and becomes the Grand. Not in Texas. In Texas, nothing is progressive. You make yourself available for the office of Grand Junior Warden, and if elected, then you progress, and if tradition prevails. But like, you get to vote, and every past master in Texas gets a vote. So if you presided over a lodge in Texas, you get 1 vote. The lodges get 3. So either whoever's representing the lodge, whether it's the master, one of the wardens, or the elected proxy, he gets a clicker that counts for 3 votes. So the most you can have is 4. So for example, this year I'm worshipful master for the 7th time of a different lodge, and I'm a past master. So I had 2 clickers, 1 for 3, 1 for 4. So I would get 4 votes, and that's the most any one person can have. And there's pockets in Texas that carry a lot of weight and a lot of votes. The Committee on Work is one of them. North Texas, I mean, it's just divided into separate different groups. And usually if you have 3 of those groups, you typically win. And that's kind of what my analysis or my breakdown of who gets elected wins. And we'll go back to November of 22, right? November of 22, there's a guy named Jim Rumsey. Jim Rumsey is right now the new Grand Junior, or the Grand Senior Warden of the Grand Lodge of Texas. And at the time, he was running for Grand Junior Warden, and he was running unopposed. This is the first time since 1964 that anybody had run unopposed for the office of Grand Junior Warden. And we're like 2 months away from Grand Lodge. And at the time, Brad Billings was Grand Master of the Grand Lodge. And Brad, very young, at the time he was 39 years old, I think. The youngest Grand Master we've had in a long time. Not ever. We've had some that have been much younger. But back in like 19-dickety-2. And Brad, whether you like him, hate him, love him, whatever, like, it is undisputable that he had more activity and more energy brought to the Grand Lodge than any other Grand Master in the last 50 years. Easy. Probably more in the last 20 years combined. I mean, Brad did a lot.
And he embraced new ideas, right? He was all over social media.
Absolutely. And he did a lot of really good things for the Grand Lodge, but he upset some of the past Grands, even from the gate for the way that he did his campaign, essentially. He did not break any laws, but he didn't do a traditional campaign for the office of Grand Junior Warden. And he beat 2 other guys that were the favorites to win. So there was a 4-man race that year, and Brad won, and he beat 2 guys that should have beat him. So that pissed them off. So from the gate, Brad had enemies in that. So fast forward, the whole time Brad's going to the line, they're trying to stop him, trying to file charges against him to make him not get to the east. But it wouldn't work because the guys that were in front of him in the line didn't agree with it. So Brad's Grand Master, and they have the past Grand Masters at this point, have a slew of charges that they're going to file against Brad as soon as he gets out of office. So they approach Jim Rumsey, the only candidate running for Grand Junior Warden, and tell him, we're going to file charges against Brad. Are you on board? And his answer is, if they're legitimate, yeah. And they left it at that. Well, this gets back to Reese Harrison. And Reese is like, no, that's not an answer. Go ask him again. So they went and asked him the same question again back in November. And the answer was the same. If they're legitimate, I'm on board. And that's not what they wanted to hear. They wanted to hear, yes, implicitly, no matter what happens, even if they're fake, false charges, you need to be on board.
Right.
So when he didn't do that, it kind of blew up out of proportion. So in December, during our Grand Chapter and Grand Council session, there is a blue house that's like across the street from the side door of the Grand Lodge, literally like across the street. And Masons usually rent that, and they have a party there during whatever the Grand York Rite, Grand Chapter session, or Grand Lodge session. and there was a party there, and Jim Rumsey left the party to go to the Grand Lodge building, and he had a cup in his hand, and he tried to open the side door, and it was locked, but they have him on camera holding a cup, and allegedly there was alcohol in that cup. Now, we have a law in the Grand Lodge of Texas that states that intoxicating liquors, which is why we use that term a lot on the Texas Freemasons, is forbidden in the Grand Lodge Memorial Building or any building occupied by Masons. In, I-N.
Right.
Not on the premises, not on the building, in.
We have the same exact law in the jurisdiction of Florida.
Right. So the fact that it says in, not on, created a problem because they filed charges against Jim Rumsey a month before he was running for office to be Grand Junior Warden for having alcohol on the premises.
So, but the only evidence they had was a picture of him holding a cup.
Yeah, it was all speculation. But now, was there alcohol in the cup? I'm not a betting man, but I'm pretty sure there was. Right? But again, it is their burden to prove that.
And he never brought it into the building anyways, right?
Never brought it into the building. However, the guys that at the time were in the Grand Line, so at the time, the Grand Junior Warden, Rayburn Reeder, and at the time Grand Senior Warden, Bart Henderson, are the ones that filed the original charges against Jim.
That was
Jim,
special. I mean, I saw that. That was done in open Grand Lodge.
That was before that. So
okay.
You're ahead of yourself, right? So this was in December when that happened.
Oh,
they did that
before. Gotcha.
So Jim returned the favor and filed charges against Bart and Rayburn for the same thing because he's like, hey, I was just at Conroe Lodge 2 weeks ago, and Bart Henderson brought a bottle of wine to the lodge building, and in the lodge building presented it to Rayburn and said, this is from my wife to yours. Now, it was sealed. Guess what? That violates the very law that they filed against him because they had intoxicating liquors in the building.
In the building, yeah.
So whenever he brought those, then everybody dismissed the charges. Brad Billings was Grand Master, and he just dismissed both sets because he's like, okay, well, Jim never had it in the building. You guys did. It was sealed, honest mistake, dismissed all of them. Well, the machine got 4 guys to run against Jim Rumsey that year for Grand Junior Warden. So now we're in January of 2023. Jim is running for office, but the rumor mill at Grand Lodge that year spread like wildfire that Jim needed to be unelected because he was a drunk, he was an embarrassment to Freemasonry, and yada, yada. Jim won in a landslide against 4 other people. He won on the first ballot. I think he had like 1,800 votes.
Wow.
Like just slaughtered them. Well, that's where you come in, and that video you saw online happened. As soon as the new Grandmaster, Clay Smith, gets installed, he receives charges that he's never seen before, which we could all tell was scripted. Did a horrible job at reading. He read like a toddler. My kindergartner reads better. And it was embarrassing. Like they did this in front of all the people that showed up to watch their family be installed, all these Masons to open installation. And then they recorded it and put it on YouTube to embarrass Jim. Now, we stopped it from happening, right? Brad Billings got up to the microphones at point of order. You can't do this. We're in session. So that became infamous.
Yeah.
And the very next day during the executive session, they relieved Jim from his duties, from his ceremonial duties as Grand Junior Warden, but they couldn't take his administrative duties. So he's still on the board. All that meant is basically like if there's a cornerstone leveling, you can't show up and represent the Grand Lodge. You can still wear your apron, you still get the title, but you don't get to submit reimbursement for travel. So for several months, I think it was like almost 6 months, Jim was like suspended from his duties. And in September, like the whole year, we had ups and downs where the Grand Master would do something stupid, right? Clay Smith told all of his deputies that if he saw them online with a cigar or an intoxicating beverage, he would remove them as district deputy Grand Master. It doesn't matter if it was in at lodge or if we weren't wearing Masonic regalia. If you were online holding
there's no law that says that is an issue, right?
No, there isn't.
Right.
There isn't.
So how can you justify that? How does he justify that?
That's what he wanted to say.
That's like saying, if I see you wear polka dot someday, I'm going to just remove you as a Mason. Like you don't get to arbitrarily make those rules.
Absolutely. You don't. But he did. He thought he was He thought he was entitled. I mean, there's a lot of things that he did. After he removed Jim Rumsey, he sent out a letter saying, like, it would be a Masonic offense if you discuss what happened with Jim Rumsey with anybody. You can't tell me that. I'm an adult.
They did, though, right?
But they sent it out, and I didn't stop talking about it because they can't. That doesn't violate anything of Grand Lodge. You can't give an edict that interrupts my personal life. If I want to tell my wife that you guys are acting crazy and suspending a guy from his, like, no, that wasn't a secret. That was, you did something secret, but I didn't. You're not going to stop me from talking. I'm a grown ass man. But that's kind of what set the tone. And the whole year he did stuff like that just kind of, like you said, it started triggering a lot of things that we're seeing happening. And then I approached Brad Billings. I approached Jim Rumsey. I approached Justin Duty. Justin Duty at the time was the Grand Secretary, and he was running for Grand Junior Warden. Brad Billings, past Grand Master, was running for Grand Secretary, and Jim was running for Grand Senior Warden. And I told all three of them, this is what's going to happen. And by the end of the year, Brad is going to be brought up on charges for some of the things that he did last year. Justin's going to be brought up on charges, and they're going to try to get rid of all of you guys. And they all kind of laughed, and they said, no, they have nothing on us. They can't do that. Okay, sure, it's going to happen. Like, I didn't do anything wrong, but they filed 12 Masonic charges against something that I did not do. So they'll find something. They'll twist it, and mark my words, the one that they're going to charge each one of you with is conduct that brings discredit to Masonry, because that's very vague. Right. You could pick your nose and say, well, that brought discredit to Masonry, and what are you going to, like, it's speculation, and it's that guy's opinion. So he could file it for that. It's just your burden to prove that. But nevertheless, if you are under charges for picking your nose because it is unmasonic, okay. If it takes
penalties apply, right? Like, when you're under charges, you can't be nominated for a position, right?
Exactly.
They basically pause your Masonic career. You're locked out.
Exactly. So that's exactly what they did. So in September, I was asked to give a talk, and that's what I talked about. It was at the Houston Festival, and the talk was basically just like, the trustees and the machine are using Masonic charges as a way to advance their agenda. And that was kind of like the spark that sparked this little revolution we created, was that talk. And everybody that was there, kind of like, within 2 days, everybody in the whole state knew about it, because I had people from all over the state asking me if they can have a copy of it.
When was it, roughly?
Yeah.
When was it?
That was September 9th. And that day,
okay.
Funny enough, one of the things that I said at that talk, I said, before the end of the month, and Brad Billings was sitting right next to me, I was like, this man, Brad Billings, is going to be under charges. Before the end of the year, that man right there, Justin Duty, is going to be under charges. And sure enough, that day, they filed charges against Brad in Dallas. But while we were all having the festival, the machine was filing charges against Brad in some lodge in Dallas. So
wow,
that kind of got me stirred up, and I didn't like it, but whatever. And people started like, well, you need to run for Grand Master. I don't have the time. Like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And time progressed. We go to Grand Chapter and Grand Council in December. I talked to some of the powers that be from part of the machine. The then Deputy Grand Master, Bart Henderson, I tell him, like, hey, man, what you guys are doing is not cool. You and I are friends, Bart. You need to kind of talk to the Grand Master and cease some of the stuff. You're creating a division. You don't want a civil war, man. And his response was, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know the whole story. And I kind of just laughed. I was like, Bart, I know the whole story better than you think I do. And he goes, well, no, you don't. I'm like, all right, well, then I might have to prove you wrong one day.
You don't know the manufactured story. That's what he's basically saying.
A couple of days later, or that very next day, they had a meeting of the trustees where they tried to fire Justin Duty from office as Grand Secretary. And it didn't work.
I saw it. Yeah. It looked like there was some kind of a report that was given that said, actually, they couldn't find any of what he was accused of.
Well, so in this meeting, the reason that Justin got saved is because they brought up during this meeting that the upper trustees, which is not a term defined anywhere in our law, this is something that the Grand Master made up. The upper trustees became what he called himself as Grand Master, Bart Henderson as Deputy Grand Master, and Raven Reeder as Grand Senior Warden. And that, like, and for some reason, by calling them upper trustees, he gave them more power than the other three.
The titles are offensive to me. The fact that you have an upper trustee is offensive to me.
Well, me too. But I mean, he made it up. And he made it up just to give them more credence, because our law clearly states what the trustees are and are the elected officers of the Grand Lodge: Grand Master, Deputy Grand Master, Senior Warden, Junior Warden, Treasurer, and Secretary.
And they run equally. There's no above, below, high, low level.
Exactly. And you need 4 of them for a quorum, 4 of them for a majority. Like, that's how this works. If you have 3 guys at a meeting, you didn't have a meeting. If you didn't notify all 6, you didn't have a meeting.
Yep.
If you don't have 4 people voting in favor of it, then whatever you voted for didn't pass. Well, the upper trustees had a secret meeting where they were going to vote to remove Justin Duty from office. And they approved that, and they hired a very expensive law firm to get this done. So in this meeting that I'm talking about in December 8th, that's when it came up. They're like, well, we hired this law firm, and they discovered that we have grounds to remove him from office, and this is how we're going to do it. And the treasurer went, time out. When did you guys approve this? Oh, we had a secret meeting a few months back. A secret meeting? Like, you need all of us there.
Right.
I wasn't informed of this. And then he's like, well, we submitted a bill and you approved it. I was like, oh, this bill? This bill for $4,000? No, I didn't approve this. I haven't paid for it because we didn't approve it. And so then when he brought that up, they got mad at him.
Investigation time. Yeah. Got to get rid of him. He's not playing ball.
So exactly. So the very next week, they kind of like, that failed. Nothing happened. And a week later, I'm in Mexico and my phone starts blowing up. And I'm in Mexico because we're doing a Tall Cedars. I'm on the board of directors for the Tall Cedars of Lebanon. And we have a house there that we sponsor for kids that are abandoned, that don't have mobility issues, that we help them. Most
That's
of them
awesome.
must whatever else.
Yeah.
And we were there for a Christmas party, and it was a cool time. And as I'm getting ready to go to this the day before, I'm already there, and my phone starts blowing up that they have removed Justin Duty from office, and they had filed Masonic charges, and they did the same to the Grand Treasurer. And the Grand Treasurer's reasoning was because he didn't do a lawful order of the Grand Master of paying $10,000 worth of legal fees that nobody approved. So he got fired for doing his job.
Right.
For saying, like, I'm not paying this because the Grand Lodge didn't vote for this. It's not in the budget.
Right.
We didn't approve it as the trustees, which the job of the trustees is to run the day-to-day operations of the Grand Lodge when it's not in session. Like, I'm not paying it. So then they fired him and threatened him with charges for the same thing. That's what blew me over the top. Whenever they got rid of Rick, because he's in his 80s, great guy, like straight as an arrow. He is brilliant with finances. He's made a lot of people a lot of money. And they attacked him just because he didn't bend the knee. And everybody else was a younger Mason, right? Like Jim's in his 40s. I think Jim's like 44, 45. Justin Duty's 40, 41. Brad Billings is 40. So these are all younger Masons that are making themselves available for office. Those 4 guys, that's 4 people on the board of trustees, right? So if they all get elected, they have majority of the board.
Right.
So that's when I was like, nope, not having it. And I published the first T, which was about how they illegally try to remove Justin from office, and I talked about the lawyer fees.
Now, you said you published the first T. A lot of people listening aren't going to have any clue what you're talking about. Where does that come from?
So, in the South, predominantly, there's a saying that you say, "Spill the tea," which kind of means like give us the gossip.
Gossip. Okay.
Give us the gossip. So that's kind of what that comes from, is spilling the tea. Give us the gossip.
Gotcha. All right. I thought there might have been some revolutionary reference to the Tea Party.
Well, and I also used that together with the talk that I gave on the 9th of September, where like I said, like if we're not careful, they could take our Grand Lodge from us. But I think a revolution is necessary. And so it brought both of those things together about Green Dragon Tavern, where the Boston Tea Party was come up with during a passionate speech.
Yeah.
And this idea came to be. So I merged the two together, and that became the battle cry, was the teas.
The tea.
Now, the week before, like during when the Grand Chapter Grand Council session that took place, I was installed as conductor of the council for the Grand Council of Texas. And the guy that's Grand Master is a good friend of mine named Aaron Zazinski. And Aaron was accosted by several past Grand Masters, demanding that he remove me from office because I was a lightning rod and I was bad for the Grand Council and he shouldn't have me there. He's like, I'm not removing him. He's a good Mason. He's done a good job. So that's when all those terms kind of like hit together at the same time. So I branded the whole tea idea with the spilling the tea, the revolutionary aspect to it, and the fact that they were going to call me a lightning bolt as a diss. So I took that away from them and made it a positive thing. So I started publishing these teas, and every other day or so I would publish an article, a couple pages long, kind of ousting something that some of these guys did.
Yeah.
So like
some were incredible. I mean, the video of the guy peeing in the catering room, for example.
Yeah,
how did you even get that? Where does that come from? I say the guy. That is a past grandmaster, right?
It's Reese Harrison.
This is Reese.
Yes, the most decorated, powerful Mason in the country. Yeah, that's him with his pants around his ankles.
And explain that situation a little for people, because I found it amazing.
So I caught a lot of flack for this, but a lot of people, especially older Masons, tried to tell me that was wrong of me to do. And I didn't do that to embarrass Reese. I did that to prove a point, because if the animal would have been on the other, it would have been completely different. As a matter of fact, whenever the whole thing came up with Jim Rumsey about him having the alcohol or whatever, Reese was trying to get the civil law committee to embarrass Jim. And they said, like, if we would have had the full video of him doing something, like, we would have destroyed him. And this is what Reese is telling people. Like, if we would have had a video of him doing a little bit more, we would have shown it to everybody. And that's why his whole idea was to embarrass them. So if that would have been any of us, if I would have had an accident or a similar situation, I wouldn't be a Mason right now, because Reese would have used that to get me expelled.
Yeah.
So, that video, I came through it through legal measures, and it happened back in March of 23, and rumors started popping up about that existing, and people were talking about it, but nobody would say who it was, because everybody's afraid of Reese. So people would pop up on Texas Freemasons and say, well, this happened, right? So back in April, so a month after it happened, I made this post on the Texas Freemasons kind of alluding to it, and I became a Freeman of London, which is an honor that's bestowed upon people by the city council and the mayor of London, which it's an old term, but it basically says that you have certain rights within London. One of those rights is that you can carry your sheep across London Bridge into the city of London, and you can relieve yourself in public. Now, again, it's a very old honor.
Yeah,
but
very old.
I added into that saying, like, well, apparently a past grandmaster, because I didn't say his name, was jealous that I got that, so he created his own club called Pee in the Coffee Cup. And so the rumor kind of started fluttering, but nobody would say who his name was. So I kind of elongated that to be the last thing. And as I was going through, Mike Wiggins, the SGIG, one of his mentors, would tell us, like, no, Roberto's lying. That never happened. That would never happen at a Scottish Rite building. Mike knew since March that it happened. He actually ordered that the tape be destroyed.
This is so bad on so many levels.
He when he was told about it, he laughed, and they're like, "No, this is a really big deal, because the caterer is really upset." And he's like, "Yeah, well, destroy the tape. Don't call me. Don't bother me with this again." And hangs up the phone. And all the trustees knew. The guy that Bart Henderson, the guy that was going to be Grand Master, the deputy Grand Master last year, he knew about it, and he pretended that he didn't. Brian Dotson, all these past Grand Masters knew about it, and they just kind of turned the other cheek to it. So what happened in that particular instance is that Reese Harrison, for many years, was the chairman of the Valley of San Antonio, which means he ran that building, ran that Scottish Rite. And in the kitchen, there is a storage room in the back of that in San Antonio. There's a storage room, and in the back of that storage room is a bathroom that nobody used. So Reese always, for the whole time that he was personal representative and chairman of the Valley of San Antonio, used that as his own personal bathroom. Well, about 10 years ago, he was retired from that office, and somebody else became PR. And the people that became PR after him decided to rent that storage room out to a caterer. And that caterer used his own money to gut it and rebuild it to how he wanted it to, and made that into his catering office. And in the back of that office, there's that bathroom. and he wanted to be able to lock the office, but he was told, like, no, you cannot lock this office because inside of this office is where the security equipment is for the building. So we need to be able to have access to here so we can turn off the alarm or turn it on. So the caterer's like, well, then can I like lock the bathroom and put my safe and like important file cabinets? He's like, yeah, that's fine. And then he also put a camera because it's like, if I have to have the door open and unlocked, I want to be able to have a camera. Just if something goes missing, I know who did it. Well, on one of the days, they were having a St. Thomas of Acon meeting in the lodge room, and Reese Harrison needed to go to the bathroom. So he passed up 3 bathrooms from that particular room to go to his private bathroom. Right? So not 1, not 2, but 3 different bathrooms he passed up because he wanted to go to his private bathroom.
Right.
So he trespassed into somebody else's property that a tenant of the Scottish Rite who uses that room to
prepare
cook
food. Yeah.
Prepare food, to have is like to bring customers in, to display food. I mean, it's he walked into that room when he found it locked. Out of spite, not out of necessity, out of spite, decided to put a coffee cup next to the coffee pot and other visible like box of cookies or stuff, and dropped his pants like a toddler and peed into a coffee cup.
On video.
On video. Now he didn't know that the camera was there.
No, of course not.
But I mean, he's there with the Knight Humilitas and Knight Caritas like collars around his neck, which for those of you guys that are not members of St. Thomas of Acon, those are super high honors for living your life with humility and rectitude of conduct. So he's wearing like the highest grand cross of this particular order, super invitational, like super hard to get. Very few people have these orders and these honors, and he's wearing those as he's peeing in somebody else's property that he trespassed.
Out of spite.
Because they locked his private bathroom. That's just...
So you released that. Shocking. Now, this was before your Grand Lodge session this year, I believe you released
Monday before. So the session started that Thursday. I released that on Monday.
I lost track of the story once your Grand Lodge started. I was keeping track of, you guys were saying, oh, this resolution passed or that one didn't pass. I don't know what those resolutions are, so it was tough to follow. Maybe you could tell us because you guys went en masse to Grand Lodge. All of these brothers showed up, and
that is definitely one of the proudest things I've ever done, orchestrated in my life. Because of the T's. And I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back or to like.
It's a fact.
It's a fact. Like we created I will forever have changed the trajectory of the Grand Lodge of Texas. You cannot mention the 188th convention without my name because it's because of those T's. We had the largest attendance in years. Like we tracked it from 2004, which was 20 years ago, which was the year that Reese Harrison was Grandmaster, by the way, to 2024. And that was the largest attended Grand Lodge session in those 20 years. We had, I mean, I lost the final number, but we had 3,600 votes available to vote, and we were playing high skilled chess against people that were playing checkers. I mean, we danced circles around these people. Me and some of my friends, and I'm not going to expose them because they don't need to have any flack. I'll take all the bullets. But we created a playbook. Well, I don't know. Anyway, we created a playbook that if they do this, we do this. And if they do this, we do this. And we had scripts and we had lines and and they were all followed by law. Whatever one of the main things that they were trying to do was make sure that Brad Billings and Justin Duty and all these people were not eligible for office.
Right.
They were trying to. There
were proceedings. Because they were supposed to hold their charges and have trials at the Grand Lodge, correct?
They tried to do it right before Grand Lodge.
Right. And it was delayed.
Against because the people, I was able to prove connections that shouldn't have existed. So like the guy that was the trial master, the judge for Brad's case, had like 7 conflicts of interest that would have prevented him from being a judge in a real court.
Right.
But he was part of their team, so he was going to do what they wanted. But so they overlooked all those indiscretions. The guy that was the prosecutor against Brad, like they they had just given him a charter for. There was I did a whole nother article about that took place in Austin. That just, I mean, it was fishy and it was bad. And long story short, through different mediums, the trial was postponed until after Grand Lodge. So we had a resolution that was resolution number 10, which was one of the big ones. That was a resolution that was written that stated that if Masonic charges are filed against somebody that is running for office, the trial had to be handled before the elections, and that would take place immediately upon passing. So that was the first one that we wanted to make sure that we did, because that would make sure that Brad Billings, the trial would take place that day, so we could elect him as Grand Secretary, which was one of the big things we were trying to push. So we pushed for that one.
These guys, I can just imagine these guys watching this unfold in front of them, like watching the sand slip through their fingers, essentially.
Oh, it was a beautiful thing. There was this one guy, past Grandmaster Terry Stogner. I walk into the building, and within seconds, he sees me. So I go up to him to shake. He's a past Grandmaster, and I go up to shake his hand, and he wouldn't. And I stick out my hand, and he just stares at me. And I was like, "You're not going to shake my hand, right, Worshipful?" And he goes, "After what you've been publishing on Facebook?" I'm sticking out my hand as a brother. If you choose not to shake it, that's on you, not on me. You don't have to like what I publish on Facebook. But I'm sticking out my hand as a brother. So he shook my hand begrudgingly. And he's like, "By the end of the week, you're going to have Masonic charges." And I'm like, "Okay." Then by the end of the week, you're going to have Masonic charges too. Two can play this game. I got stuff on YouTube, Terry. You want to play? Let's play. He left the next day before lunch was over because he just saw, like you said, the sand just falling through his fingers. So he left, and he was very distraught.
Wow.
Because Texas Masons came to play. I mean, they were tired of it, and like we were overwhelmingly turning. I mean, we voted down the Grand Master's report. Now people was like, "What does that mean?" Well, we didn't ratify his actions. That's what that means. That means that unless he submitted a supplementary report that we approved, that means everything he did this year he did it without our consent. So we did not approve that. So all the mayhem that he caused, on record, it's we didn't like it. You were bad.
And that I don't think I've ever heard of that happening before in any jurisdiction. Have you?
No. And we did that. Like we turned down. There was an audit report that we turned down as well. That the audit committee guy came in there and basically just defamed Brad Billings. He was just like, Brad Billings is a fraud. He should be in prison. I mean, essentially, he used big words to make it sound like that. And then when he was called, he's like, "You can't just be throwing around accusations like that." And he came back, he's like, "I never said that he was a fraud. He just did a lot of fraudulent things and should be in prison for it." And then, but he gave his report and just basically defamed Brad Billings and said that he did all these things that weren't okay. And then during the discussion, another member of the audit committee came up and be like, "We should vote this down because there's 8 of us," I think he said, on the audit committee, and not one of us, other than him, saw any of the stuff that he's asking for. So like the rest of us do not agree with that. He's putting our names on our report. We are not in favor of that. Half of that stuff are either lies or things that he fabricated or things that we didn't find or we didn't even get to look at. So
didn't pass.
Yeah, so it didn't pass. Like overwhelmingly, like I think like 93%.
Jim got office, right?
Yeah, so Jim was already Grand Junior Warden. He advanced. The Deputy Grand Master, which a lot of people now are having not buyer's remorse, but a lot of people are now like their guilt setting in because the guy that was Deputy Grand Master did not move up to Grand Master. We elected a past Grand Master for that office. And a lot of people are having guilt about that. And Bart is a really good guy. Bart Henderson, the guy that was Deputy Grand Master, the guy unelected. He was a really good guy. He's been a friend of mine for years. But Bart was led astray by the then Grandmaster Clay Smith, by Reese Harrison, and by past Grandmaster Brian Dotson. He was doing their bidding, doing what they wanted, and they are the ones that cost him his Grandmastership. So,
well, you have to be careful who you associate with because it's going to come on you.
But I mean, he did their bidding. So, like, Bart is a great guy, but he did not do very good things last year.
Right.
He followed what they told him he needed to do, and it's a shame because I mean, I would have loved to see Bart be Grandmaster. I was looking forward to that, but this past year proved that it wasn't going to be Bart in the Grand East. It was going to be Reese Harrison and Brian Dotson again, and those guys were going to do whatever they wanted to, and they were going to attack other people, and we were going to have what we had this past year with Clay Smith on steroids with Bart. So it was going to be bad.
The state wouldn't have survived that. I feel like you guys would have fractured off and tried to form a second Grand Lodge, and it would have been a hot mess.
I don't know what would have happened, but it would not have been good. So we stopped that. And again, I've been in communications with other people about that, because I mean, some people are like, well, I feel really bad for Bart. I do too. But I mean, like, that's not what my intention was. My intention was not to break Bart's heart. I mean, Bart and I are good friends. I mean, right there, it's a picture of him installing me as president of the Master Wardens and Secretaries Association. I mean, me and Bart are friends, but there's a line, and that line is called integrity. And like, you could be my friend, but if you cross that line where you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, or if you're doing then that's when friendship needs to be questioned. And a good friend is going to tell you, look, dude, you're and you need to rectify that, or we're going to have issues.
Right.
And I did. I went up to Bart and I told him, hey, dude, like, I don't like what you're doing. What you're doing is not wrong. And his response was, you don't know what you're talking about. Okay, then I guess I'll show you what I'm talking about. Let's start typing.
So Brad is now the Grand Secretary?
Yep, Brad is I had 29 things on my agenda to accomplish at Grand Lodge. 28 of those things happened.
What was the one you missed?
Getting a new deputy Grand Master. The guy that was senior warden did get elected as deputy, so he advanced. The Grand West voted to give him another shot. It was close, right? I mean, so he didn't win overwhelmingly, but the Grand West voted to give him another shot. So I have confidence that he's going to do the right thing this year. But if he doesn't, I'll be back.
So, I mean, how much do you think the message was received by the machine?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Do they know that it's over? Or do you think they're trying in the background, trying to rebuild some kind of a momentum?
I know they're going to try to find a way to file Masonic charges against me or come after me one way, shape, or form. But like, I mean, I've already showed them that I'm not a bull you mess with.
Right.
I wish come at me.
Come at me, bro.
Yeah, come at me, bro. I got plenty of ammunition. Like, I did not use my most important stuff. Like, I kept that for a rainy day.
Yeah. Smart.
So I've learned with these people.
Well, of course, you're a part of the Mexican mafia. You would know how to do this, right? Obviously.
Yeah. But I mean,
I got a friend who's from Mexico, and every time I hang out with him, he brings tequila, and I never remember the end of the night. Son of a, I mean, always. And he's got you have
our
some
secret
private reserve stuff coming from Mexico. That's like, wow, really, really good tequila. They know what they're doing in Mexico with tequila. Actually, I'm trying to get him on the show, but he's like, oh, they won't understand my accent. I said, look, if anyone gets mad about your accent, I don't want them as a listener on the show anyway. So he's going to be on the show.
I like that.
Man,
I really do think that they're trying to regroup. I think they got most of them did. I mean, because you had to have blown that message. Like, I mean, that's why some people were leaving early. I mean, and across the board, Mike Wiggins, the SGIG, the Sovereign Grand Inspector General, the head of the Scottish Rite in Texas, ran for the Library Museum office and got his ass handed to him by like 70% vote against him for a non-past Grand Master. Don Comedy, who's a great guy, great Mason, like slaughtered him so he beat a past Grand Master in the SGIG. Like, that's huge in any jurisdiction, right? Like, the head of the Scottish Rite in that particular state just lost a committee or a board of directors for the Library Museum building to a regular past master, like to a guy that doesn't have a resume a mile long. I mean, Don is very active, but his resume does not compare to Mike Wiggins. And again, Don ran from the floor. He didn't have a statement of availability printed in the program. Like, he was from the floor, 70% of the votes.
Wow, that's crazy.
So they got the message. They got the message. Now, if they're going to heed, that's up to them.
It's up to the brothers to stay vigilant now, because they've seen what's going to happen when you lose attention and when you let people just run wild and you don't ask questions and you don't check behind people. They've seen now what's going to happen. And the reason I'm so excited to have you on our show is because we have listeners all over the world in different countries that listen. I've been talking to guys in England and Australia, and we all have similar problems. Wherever we go, the problem is the men. The men are the problems in our fraternity. And when the problem is at the top, you can guarantee that it is trickling down throughout the entire system.
Absolutely.
Guarantee it's going to happen. So if you don't hold the people at the top accountable, you can pretty much kiss your entire jurisdiction goodbye, because it is going to slowly devolve into Lord of the Flies.
Oh, right.
That's what is going to happen. And, and I'm really proud because in the jurisdiction of Florida, they asked us not to talk about this, of course, but we had a grandmaster who, after his year, was brought up on charges and expelled from the fraternity for the actions, and also some of his cohorts for the actions that he did as grandmaster. And, a lot of people are embarrassed by that. That, to me, means we're doing our jobs. Like, somebody looked into something, they found something, they acted on it, it got taken care of. That's how the system's supposed to work. You shouldn't be embarrassed by that. That's a good thing. It's not like somebody trumped up some charges and they slammed a fake trial here. I mean, these were things that were well known were going on.
And it's happened everywhere. I mean, there's a grandmaster from Alaska that got kicked out, I think, last year or the year before last. He was grandmaster, I want to say, like in 2014. And he was one of the biggest deals in Alaska. He was a 4-star general. For those that don't know what that means, past grand master, past grand high priest, past grand commander, past grand master of the council. Really big deal. Was a member of the Great Pride of America, like one of the biggest deals in Alaska. And he got kicked out 2 years ago because he had embezzled like $750,000 from different Masonic organizations there. Like, yeah, those people should not be part of the fraternity. But
this is a story of we need to be always on watch, and it's every brother's individual job to protect the fraternity from bad actors. Every one of us is responsible for that. You cannot say it's the DDGM's job or it's the Grandmaster's job. No. If you saw it, you're responsible for it. Act on it. Do something about it.
That was exactly my battle cry for this year. I mean, I walked around and I told anybody that would listen, and I published part of that on one of my tees, to the last day of the Grand Lodge, so a week ago, Saturday. But my battle cry was like, look, we take all these obligations and we have all this pretty ritual that tells us to be proud of our aprons, and there's nothing higher than that Lance King, and we should wear that with a badge of a Mason and be proud to have that on, and yada, yada, yada.
Right.
But at the end of the day, if we're not following the precepts, if we're not following the teachings that Freemasonry is doing to us, then we're not wearing that apron with equal pleasure to ourselves and honor to the fraternity. We're merely men playing dress up. We're collecting all these badges and all these things. We're just playing dress up. We're just like, look at me on the shine. Look at all this shiny new stuff that I have, and you look like my 5-year-old little girl with her princess out. Like, I mean,
exactly, all dazzled.
Yeah. Right. So like that's what we become. If we're not going to follow the precepts, if we're not going to do what a Mason says we're supposed to do, then we're just playing dress up. We're just a bunch of parrots playing pretend.
There was a great article I shared the other day, and I got some interesting comments on it when I shared it. But it basically said, imagine if we stopped introducing people by their titles and started introducing them based on their character traits. Imagine if instead of we said, this is right, most worshipful Roberto Sanchez, which automatically people start to treat you differently because of a title.
Oh, for sure.
This is Brother Roberto Sanchez. He's done this. He's active in there, and there, and there. They get to know who you are based on your actions. That title means nothing about who you are as a Mason.
Oh, I agree.
And people comment on that and say, you need to respect titles, and this is a serious thing. And I agree. We do respect the titles. We revere the titles and the positions. But the men shouldn't be judged based on the titles. They should be judged based on their actions.
Well, respect is earned. And I'm an avid believer of that. I had one of the past grandmasters that we just thanked this time. He told me several years ago that, like, because he didn't like that I would address to certain past grandmasters or past grand this and that as brother such and such.
But in the jurisdiction of Florida, our Masonic etiquette book says that's always a valid title to use, regardless.
No, and we can use it too. But if we are sitting in a hospitality room in Dallas after some function.
Oh, they still want you to use the title?
like he wanted me to. I'm not going to. Like I'll call you brother such and such, or whatever. I mean, like I'm not gonna kiss your ass and tell you, hey, right worshipful sir. Like no, if I respect you, I might. But just because you no. Like at lodge, hell yeah, I'll be the first person to call you that, and if somebody doesn't, I'll be the first person to correct them.
Right.
But if we're at a hospitality room and we all have a scotch in our hands, and you walk in and I shake your hand and I'm like, hey, what's up, Tommy? And you go, no, that's right worshipful, past Grand Master. No. Go eat something. Like, get out of here.
Yeah, you really do. Like, I was pretty involved in Freemasonry in Florida, and I went to a lot of official functions, and I'd bring my wife to the ones that were important to me, and she would always ask me, why are they clapping for these people? Like, what have they done? And I'm like, not much really. She's like, why are you clapping? I'm like, I don't know. This is just what we do. If they have a title, we clap. And if you got a really high title, we clap special. Like, that's how we are. It really is not a lot about who you are as a person or what you've done as an individual. It's very title driven, and that's a weird thing because the fraternity is not about that. It really isn't.
It's not supposed to be.
No.
We're all on the level.
Yeah.
We teach that. Like, so it's not like we're on the level, and some of us are on the same level or are more on the level than others. Like, no, we are all on the level.
Right. Everybody equal.
Yeah. It's no, you don't get to be a little higher because you have a 33rd or because you have your past. Like, no. We're all on the level.
Right.
That's one of my favorite stories, and I mean, I'm gonna have to cuss on this one because that's part of the story.
All right.
But my wife, I met my wife through Mason. My mother-in-law when I first when I joined Masonry, my mother-in-law was my whole in-laws are very active in Masonry, right? Like my father-in-law has been all sorts of titles in Masonry. My mother-in-law was a couple years ago. She was the international president for the Social Order of Beauseants, Supreme Worthy President, I think is the official title. So like they're very, very enthralled in Masonry, and they're very active in the Knights Templar section of it. So we used to drill. And long story short, my mother-in-law would always tell me, "He's like, you need to meet my daughter." For 10 years, she told me that until we finally did, and that's how I met my wife. So, fast forward, and and I'm not going to mention the name because I don't want to embarrass anybody, but we were at a function where there were round tables, but we were one of the head round tables, and it was me, my wife, past grandmaster of an organization, the sitting Grand Master of an organization, a past Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Texas, the sitting Grand Worthy Matron of Eastern Star, my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, and me, right? So that's what's sitting at the table. And my wife is really good friends and really likes hanging out with this particular past Grand Master of this national body.
Okay.
And every each other, they hang out. And I mean, my wife is 35 at the time. She must have been 30. And
how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 40.
Okay. Young, very young in Freemasonry for everything you've done.
I hit the ground running. And anyways, like this man is in his 70s, right? So they're good friends, and he's very intellectual. My wife really likes him. And in the middle of their conversation, like they gabbled because we were going to do a prayer. So we stop the conversation, we do the prayer, we sit back down. And as soon as we sit back down, my wife puts her hand on the past Grand Master's shoulder and says his name and says, okay, such and such, where were we? And to continue the conversation, and the sitting Grand Master of the organization goes, and he just kind of clutched his pearls, and he's like, we don't call him by his name. His name is past Grand Master such and such. We use the correct title here. We don't call him by his name. And my wife looked at him dead in his face and he goes, I don't play your club. This is my friend such and such, and I'm not going to address him for anything other than that. I don't have any obligations to you. I'm not part of the club. I'm not part of the game. So anyways, and just continued to talk.
Your wife and my wife would get along so well.
And it was a beautiful thing because like the past Grand Master of Texas just looks at me and starts laughing. The worthy matron just kind of starts doing this. My mother-in-law is like underneath the table now because she just told the Grand Master of this international order because he tried to tell my wife, like, you use the titles for him. And she's like, nah, not even a little bit.
She's not even a member of the fraternity. Why would she have to use a title?
But because most women do, like, and they're trained to do that.
They do. You're right.
And my mother-in-law is adamant about that. Like, she'll see one of these, like, hi, Grandmaster, hi, and she knows everybody's title, and it's a respect thing. And I mean, I can respect that. But
I guess that's her
but
choice. And if
right.
that's how you choose, that's cool.
So if I want to call you most worshipful or right worshipful because I believe you've earned that title in a social setting, I'll do it because that's what I do to people that I admire and respect. But if I don't expect me to call you that. If we're at a hospitality room, at a banquet, maybe, right? Because a banquet, that's still kind of like a Masonic thing.
Yeah.
So I might extend you that. No, we're on the level.
So, I mean, that's a great story. I mean, my wife, I just recorded the last episode with her, and we did a whole hour and 20 minutes about what it's like to be the wife of a Mason and the sacrifices and the challenges and all that. And going to an event and 18 old ladies asking to join we need you, we need young people, and all that. But, moving forward, looking at the future of Texas, do you feel you got to feel more proud and excited for the future at this point than maybe you have in the last 5-10 years, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, like, we proved this past weekend that we matter. Our voice matters, and it's not just a bunch of people in a purple tower that are going to make the decisions of what happens at our ground.
This is a democratic fraternity. Our country was built on the principles of Freemasonry. So if you're a Democrat, not Democrat, obviously that's, I'm sorry I'm talking to a guy in Texas, but if you're into democracy and you like the idea of our country, then you got to respect that in the fraternity because that's where it originated from. And I brought a new guy, Sean Cooney. He's now the junior warden in my lodge to Grand Lodge last year for the first time. And he didn't have a lot of background, but he came in and saw the legislation taking place. And the Grandmaster put forth legislation that the craft shot down. The Grandmaster tried to revise it. They still shot it down. It didn't pass. They just didn't want it. And this is a good Grandmaster. He was trying to do a good thing. He was trying to raise the level of our dress in the lodges. But that can be a sticky subject, because people come from work and people work, on a farm in some parts of Florida. Like, it's really tough to say everybody's got to wear a suit. And it didn't pass. Nobody wanted it. And he saw that. He came out jaw dropped. Like, I just saw, I think, democracy for the first time in my life. Like, people voted on something and everybody had a voice. And at the end of the day, everybody shook hands and loved each other. Nobody was upset or pissed at anybody. Like, that's the way it went. Okay, let's move forward.
That's how
we got to work on that legislation and try to find something that they will like. Obviously, it's not a dead issue, but it's not going to pass the way it was. And that's like what happened in Texas. The voice of the people should dictate what happens, not a few people in a back room having secret meetings, not telling anybody, making backroom deals, trying to squash people's Masonic careers if they don't play ball with them. And that's happening even at the lodge level, even in a blue lodge. I mean, I've experienced it myself in a blue lodge. Yesterday, I was on a call with a brother who knows me and called just to tell me his story. And he has been basically squashed Masonically and threatened for trying to do what's right because the people around him are part of the machine and they're linked to the top. If you connect the dots, it all starts at the top.
And that's how he did it. That's what we're gonna. Yeah, it's a vicious game with a vicious cycle, and I'm not standing for it, and you shouldn't either. I mean, I'm really hoping that this movement that we had in Texas, this little tea party that we threw ourselves, carries on. Because Texas is one of the largest jurisdictions in the world, and if we were able to do this in Texas, you can do this anywhere.
Okay, but you do have to have outgoing personality. You have to not give a shit about the negative crap that's going to be heaped upon you, which most people don't have the fortitude for that. Let's be honest. You do,
I'll give you that.
And Texas had you and a few other people. But I see it. People aren't willing to fight. They don't have the fortitude or the courage to stand up and take it. And you are going to get it. Trust me. If you stand up against the machine, no matter how high or low it is, you're going to catch some shit. And people are they're going to attack your reputation. It will happen. And you have to have the fortitude to take that, hold your head high, and show up the next day fighting the good fight.
Right. And I might kick myself for saying this later, but I'll say it now. Like, if anybody needs help in any jurisdiction, come find me. I will help. We're in this together, brothers. I mean, it's a thing. So I mean, I'm here to stand up for justice, for integrity, for doing what's right in our fraternity, because I believe in the values that we teach. I believe in the precepts that it does. Because my biggest thing, like the biggest reason that I push for this, is that I now have a new son. Right, I have a 14-month-old son right now that was born in November of 22.
Congratulations!
And thank you. And
firstborn?
Well, second, I have a little girl that's 5.
Okay,
but I have a son, right? And my daughter cannot be a Mason, but my son can. And I am an adamant believer that this fraternity, we did not inherit this fraternity from our forefathers. We did not inherit this from George Washington and Paul Revere. We are borrowing it from our sons.
right.
So I want to make sure this fraternity gets passed down to my son. It's something that he could be proud of and say, you know what, my dad was a member of this fraternity, and my grandfather from the mother's side, because my dad wasn't, but my son will be like an 8th or 9th generation Mason from his mom's side. But that's something that I want him to be proud of, and to be able to inherit or get a fraternity that I'm borrowing from him. That way, when he's a Mason, it's something that he can be proud of, and that we're actually teaching the teachings, and practicing what we teach. And
it's so important because we can lose it. We've lost it. We've already lost it in some places, and it can be gone in your lodge. It can be gone in your jurisdiction if you don't be careful. And these people wrap themselves in power. They surround themselves with an aura of esteem with titles,
right.
And they lean on those very people that we all look to, like George Washington and the founding fathers that were Freemasons, and say, I'm like that guy. And that's how they get credibility. Again, it should be about what have you done, though? What have you done, though? Like, who have you helped? Other than yourself and your family and your friends, who have you helped? That's what I want to know. Did you help fraternity grow? Did you help in charity in your community? Like, what have you done, though? Because you don't get to point at those guys. This is our time. We're alive now. This is our fraternity right now. We're holding the torch. Like you said, we're holding the torch for our kids coming behind us. If they choose to do that, hopefully they do. Hopefully we give them a reason to.
Exactly.
And I think that, with the people turning more to social media, more modern forms of communication, video conference calls like this, podcasts, like we can coordinate and communicate better now than probably at any point in the history of the fraternity.
Absolutely.
And that scares some people.
Oh, for sure.
Pay attention to who's scared by that, because that's going to give you a little clue as to where the problems might be.
Oh, for sure.
There's nothing wrong with talking to each other and coordinating and sharing ideas. There should be nothing wrong. It should be encouraged by our leadership for brothers to communicate with each other and help each other. If anyone's afraid of that, that's a canary in the coal mine right there, I think. And it's something people should take a close watch. Shutting down, you can't talk about this, you can't say that. Okay, something shady's going on there. You should know that immediately. Don't fall prey to the titles and the people saying it. And I'm not against leadership, okay? Like, I don't want to come across like
that's one of the
leadership.
When some of the guys there were just like, you're just having a beat on the trustees party, and no. You guys are doing stuff that's shady. You guys are trying to keep us in the dark, and that's one of the things that happened that you probably didn't see because you didn't make it out to you. But about a week before the Grand Lodge session, there was a letter that went out to every Texas Mason through Grandview from the Deputy Grand Master, telling all Texas Masons that, like, basically, don't look behind the curtain. The allegations that are being thrown out there are unfounded, and don't listen. There's somebody that's trying to dismantle us from within because they're jealous of what we're creating.
What you're seeing isn't really happening. What you're hearing is all fake.
Like, don't look behind the curtain. Like, don't pay attention to the evidence that he's already provided you. Don't look that way. Like, just trust us. We're cohesive.
Right.
We're working for your betterment.
Yes.
Everybody's good, nice friends, and people laughed at that.
It was a joke. They put out a statement before your Grand Lodge session that was a total joke.
Oh, absolutely. And I was going to respond to it, and I didn't have to.
No, you just read
because
it. I mean, you could see how bad it was by reading the words that were written in that statement. It was a joke.
And that was Bart's nail in the coffin. That's what turned everybody against him, was that one. If anybody was on the fence, that pushed them over, because it showed that they had no remorse with what they were doing, and that they were going to keep doing their stuff. And it was, trust us, the government's here to help you, while they're like carrying the head of your like dead grandmother on their shoulder. Like
servant leadership. We're here. We're supposed to be doing servant leadership. Like, we serve the population, the brothers.
Absolutely.
And you answer to them. You hold a seat for a short time, and you're already flawed as a man. You should already know that. So you got to be watching out for the fact that when you have power, you might abuse it. And these guys that lean into it and are empowered by it, like I was talking to a brother yesterday who's dealing with it in his lodge, and it involves his district deputy, and it involves people with gold collars as well. And I said, just get out of the lodge, man. You can't win this fight. You just need to go to another lodge and try to find some people that are real Masons to surround yourself with, or you're not going to be a Mason in a few years. You're going to get burnt out. You're going to be hating. You're going to be hating your involvement that you rue the day you even joined this fraternity if you don't get away from that right now. You need to get out, find a better lodge, regroup, get yourself some good people, and have a better experience in the fraternity, unless you're willing to be a voice. Are you willing to do this and this and this? He said no. I said, just go get another lodge. Just leave. Because he tried charges and that didn't work.
Yeah.
So you really have nowhere else to go at that point. Just get a new home. And we need to be out here talking about the fact that this is going on everywhere in our fraternity. And it shouldn't be something that's brushed under the rug or allowed to happen. We got to fight back. And we fight back using fraternity. You guys did not break a single rule in what you did in the jurisdiction of Texas. Everything was done in order at Grand Lodge, as per the digest of your Grand Lodge.
Right. Yeah, we outlawed them every step of the way.
So
we came prepared. I mean, that playbook saved us. I mean, because we had if they do this, we do this, and it was just for whatever resolution, for whatever fight we were fighting, it was tabbed and organized. We came prepared, and it reflects. So after the meeting, we were told that a lot of the lawyers and some of the past Grand Masters assembled at the one of the committee rooms in the back, and one of the lawyers went like, "Look, they beat you at your own game. They out-lawyered the lawyers, and they made fools of you. They spanked you at your own game because they came prepared. You underestimated Roberto and his team." And I mean, I had a hell of a team. Again, I'm not going to say their names because I don't want them to get attacked. Like, let the bullets come at me. But the people that worked with me, they deserve a lot of the credit, because there was a lot of us. And a lot of them put their Masonic careers on the line, because some of them were more vocal than others. Right? There were some that were working behind the scenes, but there were a lot of them that were standing up at the podium and holding on to the little scripts that we would give them and reading their portion of their things to make their argument and whatever. And
well, I'm planning to have Dennis Yates and possibly Justin Jones. Do you know these brothers?
Yeah, those they run a podcast themselves. Dennis was very boisterous about some of the things that happened. Dennis is a good dude, so is Justin. They're great guys.
They're planning to come on. Actually, we're probably going to be recording this weekend, so they'll have their point of view on all this too. There are people not afraid to step forward with you.
Yeah, Dennis and Justin for sure were some of the guys from the beginning that helped me get the message out there. They had me on their podcast. When was it? I want to say in December, maybe. I don't remember. Either November or December.
Before Grand Lodge.
Before Grand Lodge, they had me on their podcast to kind of get the word out of some of the things that were happening, and then they had another podcast where they had me on with Brother Fluff. If you're not familiar with him, he runs a very successful TikTok account.
Okay.
With like, I don't know, several thousand followers.
Nice.
So we had one with him. I mean, we've had several where we got the word out, so as many Texas Masons could know what was happening.
I personally try to follow all these podcasts and support them, because if you're an outsider, you're going to look at that as competition, and you're going to like kind of be jealous. But as a brother, we're supposed to rejoice in each other's successes, and all these people are trying to bring light to the fraternity, so we should be supporting each other. That's
Right.
how we should act as brothers. Now,
For sure.
you have risked your Masonic career. You've risked your personal reputation. You are still risking that by coming on this podcast and talking about what you've talked and what you said publicly online. You're well aware of that. And you just made a very magnanimous offer that if anyone in any jurisdiction is feeling like they're being persecuted, wronged, or they're witnessing unmasonic behavior, they can reach out to you for help. How would they reach out to you?
The easiest way to find me would be Facebook.
Okay.
Roberto M Sanchez. You'll see me. I'm wearing my my high 12 international vice president collar on there.
Would it be okay if I shared your Facebook URL with this podcast?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. You could either also email me as well. Roberto@high12.org.
Roberto@high12.org.
Yeah,
12 spelled out, right? Number 12?
No, HIGH and then the number 12.
The number 12. Okay.
Number 12. And I mean, you can go to the High 12 webpage, and my email will be there as well. At Roberto@high12.org. You can email me there, and I answer emails probably very quickly.
Excellent.
Those are the two ways to get in touch
that
with me.
actually could provide some hope to some people out there that don't. The way they win is by isolating you or making you feel isolated. And so
for sure.
To have somebody that they can, like this brother I talked to yesterday, I can't really fix his problems for him, but he knew me because I'm locally known, and he just needed to talk to somebody about what to do. And I think a lot of people are in that situation. They don't know. They don't have a friend. They're afraid to talk to anybody in the fraternity about it for fear of the repercussions if they tell somebody what they said. And so they stay quiet to themselves and they take it. Or they leave the fraternity, which is...
And that usually is the goal.
Yeah. The one thing we don't need is be driving men out because we're assholes. But it seems to be happening at breakneck speed in many jurisdictions.
For sure. No, that seems to be one of the. I mean, if somebody does something that they shouldn't be a Mason for, then yeah, like definitely file charges against them and get. That's what they're there for. But I mean, and like as you mentioned,
those trials aren't always fair, as you know.
Right. No, and it's happened more and more often where people are just being like in my case, when the charges were filed against me, like they kept me in purgatory for years, hoping that I would just quit. And in Texas, we have this thing called as a Form 3, where Form 3 is a voluntarily expulsion. When you have charges filed against you, you just find a Form 3.
Really?
You submit that back. Done, yeah. And that's what they were hoping. I mean, every couple months, I would get a letter from the Grand Secretary saying, "Do you just want to Form 3 it?" And I'm like, "No, I'm fighting this to the bitter end. Like, time's on my side. I'm young. Let's do this."
That's right.
But they were hoping that I would just quit halfway through, because that's what they were hoping would just happen, is that I would just leave and I wouldn't be their problem. And they did that most often than not. And a lot of people just say, okay, yeah, but this isn't worth it, because they hadn't invested that much time. By the time the charges had filed against me, I'd already been a Mason for 10 years, and I've already had invested a lot.
And that's, I think that's maybe how you've insulated yourself from repercussions, is you have accomplishments and achievements that could perhaps, show people who you are.
So let's talk about that. They did try to stop me from getting some of these accomplishments and achievements, because again, when
they will.
Well, they tried originally, right? Like when the first charges were filed against me back in 2014, like I was an up and comer, right? But I was not a somebody. Like I was a young man in his 20s. I was 29 years old when all this stuff happened. I'd like maybe just turned 30. Like I just proposed to the person who was now my wife. Like I was a takeoff.
Yeah.
So they had like, I didn't have all these grand titles and everything else. Those came later. But because I wasn't gonna let them take that, and some of those, my motivation was like, look, they're not gonna take this away from me. I don't like the titles. I don't care about the titles.
Right.
But if that's what's gonna for me to get some credibility, like let's do this. And I mean, and I've done fairly well for myself in my Masonic career.
Yeah.
And here we are, right? But I mean, a lot of the ones that I do have is because that's how I was able to get a little bit of credibility. because I mean I'm a young Mason. I'm 40 years old. I've been a Mason for 18 years. But I mean I hit the ground running because I really like what this organization offers, and it has taught me a lot.
It's
given
important,
me
I think, to our world, this
for
organization.
sure.
And we can't let it slip away. Like I said, we're the guys that are active right now, and it's on us to keep it or improve it if we can. And I think that's what you're really looking to do, is improve it. People often fear this idea because young guys, I say young, I'm 48, but in this fraternity, that's young. They look at us as young and trying to change things, but the change we're trying to make isn't making it into something different or new. It's trying to make it into what it's supposed to be, what it was, to bring it back to former glory. That's the change we're trying to make. We're not trying.
I wrote a whole book about that. I wrote a whole book about that. The true Masonic experience. It started out as a study of where the fraternity was.
So you wrote a book that people can get on Amazon or something called The True Masonic Experience.
True Masonic Experience.
All right, I'll go get a copy.
And it started with my journey in Masonry, because I was very disappointed when I joined Masonry from what I expected. Now, my lodge was in transition. We had just sold the building, so that's kind of what I believed was the reason it was down. But when I joined, what I expected to get out of it was not what I got.
Yeah.
Like I was expecting the fraternity that George Washington and Paul Revere and Warren, all these people were proud to be members. And what I got was spaghetti on paper plates and reading minutes and going home. And I expected everybody to know their work, and nobody knew what they were doing, and it was atrocious. And my lodge had an average attendance of maybe like 7 or 8 people attending a stated meeting. And I started implementing some of these older traditions and more traditional aspects of Freemasonry. And by the time I was master, like I had a meeting with 120 people.
Imagine that.
Attending. My average attendance was in the 80s. So we went from having 7 people, and in 6-7 years, by the time I became master of the lodge, we had 80 as an average.
And you didn't do that because you brought in circus performers and goats and strippers. You did it by trying to be a Mason.
Right. Yeah. I did a lot of research and spent a lot of time figuring out what Masonry used to be. And we did the precepts. The biggest thing, I mean, and I talk about it heavily in the book, is that I created this concept where I interviewed thousands of Masons, and I asked them, I don't care why you became a Mason, because everybody's story is going to be a little bit different.
Right.
But why are you still active? And what I discovered, it was one of 4 things, which is like what I kind of dubbed the quadrant. And that quadrant kind of formulates the fact that Masons are active for one of 4 reasons or multiple of those 4. Whether it be the ritual, the philanthropy, the fellowship, and those 4 quadrants, whatever you fall into that circle, if you really like participating in the community and helping out the community, then you focus particularly on the philanthropy part. Like a lot of Shriners do that, right? Because they want to be able to be part of an organization. So that's what they formulate.
Mm-hmm.
If you really like the rituals and belonging to a lot of groups and performing the worshipful master's part and all the degrees, and then and collecting all the little trinkets from then you gravitate towards that part. If you like the historical and philosophical part, where you're like, well, I want to know why we do that motion and why we use those emblems, and then you focus more into like the lodge's research or just deep down philosophical studies. Or if you like the fellowship, if you just like having a place where you can go and be with your friends.
Right.
And if you have a lodge that actually encompasses all 4 of those are the more active and more successful lodges, because you'll have something for everybody.
Right.
And that's what I brought to my lodge. And it was a formula that worked, because we had something for somebody, whatever it was in that quadrant, whether you were philosophy, ritual, fellowship, or philanthropy, there was something for you. And a lot of people fall into like multiple things, right?
Sure.
Where they like 2 or 3 or even all 4 of them. But if you offer that's what grows. I mean, and when I was master my first time, that lodge had table lodges and chambers of reflection before the degrees, and we brought back a lot of traditions. We talked about the excellence of dress and what that actually means. And yes, it is the internal, not the external, yada, yada, yada. But I mean, you're still showing respect to the institution. So if you are willing to show up to your daughter's wedding in a wife beater and shorts, then okay, then show up the watch the same way. But if you would be embarrassed doing that there, then you should be embarrassed doing that.
Yeah.
And you're showing true respect to the institution. And if you come from work and you're wearing overalls and that's the only way you can, well, then come to lodge that way, my brother. We're not going to stop you.
Right.
But if you do have time, and if you do, then, and if you would be embarrassed showing up that way to your daughter's graduation or your son's christening or insert special event here, like that's the kind of reverence you should hold to the fraternity. So I cover all that in the book, and it was a formula that I used for my lodge. That again, those people didn't show up in numbers to see me. I'm nothing special. They were given there to see what the lodge was offering. And the lodge was offering Freemasonry,
Right.
which is something me and a 97-year-old man will have in common, or me and an 18-year-old man will have in common,
Right.
is that we that join this fraternity is that we wanted something to do with Freemasonry. Whereas the 90-year-old man might want to watch a program on how to write a will, and the 60-year-old man might want to watch one on how to check your prostate, but the 18-year-old's going to be like,
Right.
right? But if you have a program on Freemasonry, you know what? The 60-year-old, the 90-year-old, the 40-year-old, and the 18-year-old are going to be like, this is cool.
Yep.
Because that's something we all have in common.
One thing, I just finished being master at my lodge. I'm finally out, 1 month out, and loving it. But one thing I did was, people always say the business meetings are boring, and I know they are. But you have to do that business. So I would always bring a $25 gift card and like 6 trivia questions that I prepared. And as soon as it was getting boring to me, we did Masonic trivia, and it was a game. Everybody played. And you raised your hand if you had the question. You went west of the altar, and you waited until we had another contestant who'd win, go west of the altar, and then those 2 guys would play heads up for trivia for the $25 gift card. So everybody had a chance to win money. Everybody thought it was fun and entertaining, and it only takes 10 minutes or less if you have good people. But they're learning the whole time, and they don't even realize it. So you got to try to think creatively about how to, like you said, how to integrate these different things. Because in like trivia, for example, is just what you said, a Masonic program. It's all Masonic trivia. And it's amazing how many people with gold collars or district deputies don't know the most basic things about Freemasonry. You see it when you start asking trivia questions. Ask what the landmarks of Freemasonry are, and you'll see people go like, whoa.
I'll do you one better. Ask any American Freemason. We talk about, you give 3 distinct knocks upon the outside of the door when you're getting admission. Ask any find any Grand Master in any grand jurisdiction in the United States. And I challenge them to tell me what those 3 knocks are. I guarantee you most of them won't be able to give me that answer.
Well, in the jurisdiction of Florida, we tell them in the Entered Apprentice lecture that it represents a certain passage of scripture.
Sure, but but again, there's a sequence, right? And I'm not going. This is a public forum, so I'm not going to give you. There is a secret knock that most Americans don't know. But if you go to Europe, or if you go to Canada, even Mexico, if you're late to lodge, the Tyler doesn't knock, you knock. And so Tyler just tells you, like, it's an EA, knock in that fashion.
How they want to see if you know.
If they want to see if you know. Most Masons in America wouldn't know. They'd just be like, yeah, you just knock 3. No.
Yeah.
There's an actual knock for every degree.
Yeah.
And it's associated with
right.
a certain passage in scripture. And and there's a lesson. That's a lesson that we kind of diluted here in American ritual that we don't talk about, that the rest of the world still does. Right? So again, I challenge most Grand Masters to tell me what those knocks are. And if some of them can, I mean, come find me. I'll buy you a drink. But
and it's not anything you can say publicly, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's a secret knock, right? So if I tell you what the knocks are, I mean, then you're gonna have random people that watch your podcast and be like, I know the secret knock.
Yeah, I'll delete my own podcast if I give away a secret on the air.
There you go.
But Robert, man, I appreciate you coming on. Hour and a half you gave us. Really, really appreciate the time.
Absolutely.
I know you're a busy guy and you probably have better things to do, but I promise you this is going to do good for the fraternity. Continuing to talk about this stuff and standing for what you stand for, offering to help people. It's all things on behalf of the brothers. I would like to thank you for what you're doing and the sacrifices you're making for the fraternity. It's good stuff.
My honor, man. It's Masonic labor is to learn and teach others. We're not here for ourselves, or we shouldn't be. I want what people remember me for is not what it's engraved on some monument or a stone. I want for what I left behind in other people. So that's my whole mantra, right? Ductus example, leadership by example. I wouldn't expect anything else from anybody else. So I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to help. And I do hope that this inspires other Masons to.
I think it will. Yeah. Thank you for coming on, and hopefully we'll have you again in the near future.
Absolutely, my brother. I would love to come back.